All right, welcome back. Session 2 of this particular STI about virtual classrooms, digital escape rooms, and things of that nature. What we'll do is we'll do a quick review of last week, then we'll do some sharing of what you guys have worked on, little housekeeping stuff too. Just for instance, as a reminder of sort of where to find resources. So if I share this real quick. So this is the blog with the agenda, participant projects, and we'll talk about that next week about how to actually put in your links and things of that nature. Different resources, the session recordings. I've noticed we have been there's been some back-end changes happening with our filter and firewall software. We've actually been changing it. And sometimes I've noticed the YouTube videos don't actually appear, even though they're there. It'll be just a giant blank white box. So I've added just an additional link to the playlist on YouTube. So that way, if something happens and it doesn't show embedded, that's why. So this is the resources that we're going through, and this kind of goes through, purpose, got the agenda, but also what we're talking about in terms of the different things, as well as at the very end, there's some examples, things that have been made. Eventually, the next time we do this, we'll put your examples of the things you created, your projects. We'll use those as examples as well. And then there's always going to be, towards the end, the asynchronous work. And this is the asynchronous work of stuff that happens in between. Because again, this course is 3 2-hour sessions for 6 hours with the expectation that you do the asynchronous work in between to kind of then create that full 12 hours for the course. So that's this, and then we're going to go through and talk about, we'll review what we did last week, which was making a virtual classroom, just sort of giving everyone an opportunity to kind of share what they worked on for like a minute or two a piece. And then once we have that down, any questions, any problems, any things that arose, we'll deal with any technical stuff or questions of any sort. Once everyone's good, then we'll slide into the escape rooms, which we use Google Forms for. Sound good? Any questions before we get started about anything that came up or anything of that nature? Everyone's good? All right, so let us start, and why don't we start? Well, my view has Adam at the top. Well, Vivian's technically in the first position because she's in charge, but so Adam, why don't you share first, and then we'll just kind of go around like the screen and get everyone.
Okay.
So yeah, show us what you worked on in that virtual classroom and sort of rationale and
Sure.
any improvements that you made over previous ones based on what we talked about last week, things of that nature.
Oops, wrong one. Okay. So I changed the background a little bit from my original one, and I didn't make a bunch of slides per se. What I did is I linked stuff. So like let me actually hit present mode. So if a child were to go to this and click on the clock, it's going to take them to their schedule. So they'll get to see their schedule for the first and third quarters, and also the second and fourth quarters. And then down below here, I put a little arrow button to take me back. If they click on me, it takes them to a presentation that talks all about Mr. Nichols and what they can expect in 6th grade social studies. And I won't bore you with taking you through all of that. If they click on this is what I do every day when they come into the classroom. Up on the smart board, it has the date, the day. For us, it's A or B day. That way they know whether they have music or PE. But every day I have a goal, what I hope to accomplish. And at the end of the year, there'll be 180 something slides because there's different goals. And then also their homework. So their homework for the first day of school is to go home and think of 6 words that describe how the day went, and then find an image or draw a picture that accurately fits it. And then at the end of the year, we come back to this, and I ask them to come up with 6 words to describe their entire year. And so we compare the first day to the end of the year to see, how much they've grown, how much they've enjoyed the middle school, et cetera. And then this is, if they click this, it takes them to their Schoology page. If I click on it, it's going to take me just to my Schoology page, but it would take them to their Schoology page. Over here are the different textbooks that we use. And what I've done is I know it's not really a good thing to do, but I've digitally scanned in the entire textbook. That way, if they're ever sick or traveling or, you know, whatever, they left the book in school, if they click on it, they'll still be able to do their homework. We use Junior Scholastic in the middle school. So this would take them to the link for Junior Scholastic, and that's all digital now. They don't even bother to send the magazine any longer. And so that way they can read the articles that are assigned to them. I really like Nearpod, so I always have my Nearpod link because I like it because it's interactive, even when the kids are in class. And that's what I have so far. I plan on adding more stuff as the summer goes on, and as I think, you know, more along the lines of what I hope to accomplish this year.
So a couple quick questions while that's up. You said that Schoology goes to your Schoology page, but it will eventually go to their Schoology page.
When they click on the link, if they're signed into their Scarsdale account, it
okay.
automatically takes them to theirs.
Gotcha. Okay, that, yeah, I was just cool. And then when you talk about the scanned textbooks,
Yeah,
you have those, I guess, PDFs in Drive.
yeah, exactly. Like this one's a small book, so if I click on it, come on.
Yep. No, that's awesome, because then they could, like middle school, they could use Notability to mark it
Exactly.
up
That's
or
the other reason
annotate
why I
it.
like it. All right.
At the elementary level, Cami would be the app that we would use to annotate PDFs. So yeah, that's great, because PDFs are very versatile and sort of flexible in that scenario.
There it is.
Question about the assignment of the day. So I get that you only have 2, right? It's the first 2 days. Are you planning on having that run so you have like a file that has like all the days in there so they can go back?
Exactly. I'll update it, and so that when they go to the link, yeah, after I've updated, it'll automatically be there, and so they can, like, say they missed school on Thursday, but they were back in on Friday. They could go, you know, at home. They could go to
Scroll
it. They can
back.
go to it at any point and go back and look and see. And usually I also post it in Schoology. I'm one of those people that I always have a backup. So, you know, that way,
Yeah.
no matter where a child is, they'll be able to figure out what we were doing or what they need to do. And same thing with parents. I try to make it as easy as possible. And it cuts down on the amount of phone calls and emails I have to answer.
And one thing with that is I would recommend, as you're doing that, add the next day at the top. So
Oh yeah, no, I always do that. So like after September 1st, September 2nd, I'll just switch the position. Then the next day I'll make the new slide. It'll be September 3rd, then September, you know, whatever, 5th, 6th, 7th, exactly.
Cool. Yeah, perfect. I mean, that sounds good. I mean, that's a good framework where you have sort of the baseline of what to go into. Awesome. Miss Ricard, you're next on that row.
All right. Hold on 1 second. I have a lot of windows open. Okay. So I took like what we talked about last week with my one that I didn't touch in over a year. And I kind of made a few different ones. I haven't linked them all, but I was kind of just playing around. So instead of having like, I think I had like 50 slides here, I've taken them out and I made a separate slideshow for this morning message. I made up the special schedule because I don't know what it is. So I just put a fake time, but I figured I could do one for each week, you know, and just have it set. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
And then I made one that I had for,
Hello.
sorry about that, the wellness center, and I added a few more to that. Then I started working on one for math that I'm going to link to a math board that I started to work on here. And I connected the friendly notes that we have for Unit 1. I linked the slideshow I just showed you here. So I'm still kind of
Nice.
playing around, you know, working on it, seeing what I want to use it for, but that's kind of what I've done so far.
Cool. No, and that's great. And like, you know, especially with that, if you're breaking it out to be like each week is its own slideshow file, that's cool, because you could even then duplicate copy the whole slideshow file, and then just go in and just tweak the schedule. Or
Right. Like right now I just put in a fake specials for the, you know what I mean? But
yeah, totally.
yeah, and then for the math, I have these different slideshows that I figured I can put into.
Right, and then you can use these in other places, which is nice.
Right. And so here, like I put a place value chart. This brings them to the friendly notes for unit 1.
Now,
And
out of
great.
curiosity, with your week-long thing, would you do the 6 letter days as 1 week, or are you gonna do Monday through Friday?
Probably the letter days, but I was just like typing in.
Oh, no,
date.
right, I was just-
I
Yeah,
please
No,
create, like you can see I left it blank.
no, definitely. I just didn't know where your mind was at, whether you were gonna do a week as a 5-day week, or you were gonna think that you were actually gonna treat.
I'm gonna do it as a Monday through Friday, but it's the letter day. So like the first, I picked September 13th
Right.
day, whatever, So it will have the day, but it will also have the date.
Gotcha.
Yeah. What's nice, Allison, is that, in elementary school, we use so many different anchor charts, and
Yes.
having them there in a slideshow, like kids have their Chromebooks in class. So like even while you're teaching them, you could say, or, they're working, they can pull up that anchor chart right there on their computer.
Mhm.
It's easy access for them, and it's a nice reference tool as well.
Yeah. So I think listening to what, everyone said last week, maybe focusing on one thing right now, like the last one I made had everything, like social studies, like it was a lot. So maybe just have each one focus on one specific thing. So something for.
Oh, sorry, Allison, I hit a button. I accidentally muted you.
Something for math, something for just to get them started in the morning every day.
And if you
Awesome.
wanted, Allison, eventually you can just link in the slideshow to other documents and other, even other presentations that you make. Like it doesn't have to be in that slideshow.
Yes. Yeah. Like the textbook lesson is a separate slideshow, but it's linked in this virtual classroom
Right.
thing here. I just had it open separately. So yeah, I think like I'm definitely taking what was said last week and definitely making tweaks, making it a little more focused as opposed to hitting like every single topic.
Cool.
Great.
Awesome. Marina, you're next up.
Okay. I did something similar to what Adam did, and I just made like one big slide with a lot of linked items to it. So let me just go to share. I think, oh, I have to change my system preferences. 1 second. I got a new computer and now everything has to be allowed. 1 second. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I think I might have to leave and come back. Can I
All right.
close?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we'll jump over to Rachel.
Hello.
How are you?
So I actually missed last week because of childcare. So I teach 7th grade math at the middle school.
Mhm.
I don't usually use Google Slides and don't always love Google Slides. So I didn't want to make a virtual classroom because I kind of like the organization we use with Schoology of like having all my files and folders for
Mhm.
my lessons. But I decided to take kind of my welcome presentation where I kind of introduce myself with the course expectations and all of that and make that into Google Slides.
Cool.
I thought that might be more interactive for the parents than like just a regular letter home.
Totally.
So this is kind of what I have. So this is the beginning, and then I just kind of have a nice to see you. And then I have the hand, it kind of goes back. And then over here on the different Post-its, there's the different student expectations. I just kind of copied what I had from the previous year and just plopped it in there for now, but we'll edit kind of as need be. And then like extra help schedule I put over here.
Nice.
The only thing I wasn't sure, and I wanted to ask you, what is the best way to link to a different Google Slides presentation because I liked Vivian's virtual locker room or locker that you had.
Mhm.
And I was thinking that would be cool to have one for myself and have the students create one. But do I just take the shareable link from that slide? Or is
So,
there a better
yeah,
way?
so you can do that, or what I recommend, and we sort of touched on it briefly, is, and I'll share mine, is doing the present mode, sharing the present mode link, or which is you can either replace the word present at the end.
Mhm.
I'll show that, or you get the publish to web link.
Okay,
Because
yeah, I
then
saw
what-
that in the video. So I do get that link from there and then
Mhm.
just, okay.
And then just like, highlight, like where even like where you had that thing that said like go to the Google form, you can even then highlight that, insert a link, and then paste in the link to the Google form, or paste in the link to the other slideshow. And then the slideshow will always show up in that present mode, which is good. That way you don't have like the distraction of all the other nonsense around it.
Mhm.
But yeah, because then once it's in present mode, they just click on those and the next thing will pop up, and it'll pop up in present mode.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
No
And then
problem.
the other thing I tried to do was the grouping, I think you talked about in the
Mhm.
video. And sometimes it was working for me and other times it wasn't working for me. So I didn't know
So
if
the
yeah.
Yeah, the grouping gets a little bit funky, and I mean, let's talk about that real fast. Because let me just get my presentation up. All right, so because the grouping is like, if you're not careful, you're going to group everything. So you have to be careful about understanding and knowing where things are. And so when we look at this, like if I were to just like click and drag and highlight, I could see that a bunch of things have been selected, right? I could tell that the STI text box is selected, as is our names one. And then I can go range, I can go group. I think they're already a group. Where you want to be careful is like if you catch even a little bit of an edge of something, you may not realize that things are items off to the side. So it's about being very aware of like what is on the slide. So there's two ways to really do it. Let me get a blank one just to show you. Oh, this doesn't have a blank. Well, whatever, we'll use this one. So like, if you have two shapes, you can either click and drag across, but sometimes what happens when you do that is you accidentally grab that other object and move it. Like I just moved the thing I wasn't intending to. Alternately, if you click and drag across, you may accidentally select the other object that you don't want. So what I like to do is if I know that these are the two objects, instead of trying to drag across, is I'll click on one, then hold down the shift key and click on the other. And that is just selecting the two that I'm in. And it gets a little bit tricky if you've got a ton of objects. So if you know that you're going to start building something with a lot of objects, you can even group them as you go. So like if I wanted to, I could group these two. And then if I was like, all right, but I actually want another one, I want a circle, but I didn't know that right away. No problem. I can now click this one, shift click that one, and group it. So then now all three of those are one object. So if you're having trouble doing it because you have a lot of objects close to each other and you're not sure which is front or which is back, group pieces as you go and sort of build up to the larger group.
And that should stay as a group all the time, right? Because I was grouping it, and if I moved it right after I grouped it, it was going together. But if I like clicked out of it and then tried to click it again, it like no longer was moving as a group.
So sometimes what happens is you click it once. So like I click it and I move it, and I click out of it, click it and move it. It's the same thing. However, if I then click singular on an object, it lets me select the object inside of the group. They're all still grouped, but I could shrink this object inside of the group alone. They're still grouped, but if after I've clicked it once, if I click it again, it lets me then manipulate that because they're still individual objects.
Okay,
So
yeah, I
you-
think that's what I was doing because I usually use like Smart Notebook, and once they're grouped, like they function completely as one item and not individuals anymore. So I think it was just
Right.
working differently.
So Google Slides does both. It
Okay.
will, this will, since I've clicked it, there's nothing selected internally. There's only the external square. If I resize it, it'll resize them all as one item. So Google Slides does that. Like, it lets you adjust them all together. But Google Slides also lets you then fine tune within the group. Then
So
you
it's just
click
really
out
paying attention to what you click and,
and
what is
what's
highlighted.
Yeah. Because then, yeah, even though I resize that, it's still part of the group. So it still then lets me move and adjust as the group. Like, it still changes everything. But I could also then come in and tweak an individual shape within that group structure, making
Okay, that's
sure I'm
helpful.
just working with the outside shapes. Cool.
Chris, I have a question.
Yeah.
Where did you find that that slide you were just doing? The tabs to the right, they take you to a different page?
No. Oh, so sorry, I just did that real fast. I just added a new one. So hold on. Yeah, and definitely jump in anytime, because I tend to just do
So, like,
things
the stuff to-
instinctually.
the
No,
stuff
or
to the
you
right,
just
like,
or you just make a new one. I just made a new slide.
okay, but I just wondered, like, over here, like, if you clicked on like the blue one that said welcome, that would take you to a page of all about
So-
welcome.
In theory, it would. So, but what you would have to do is you would have to link it. Now, this is like what we were talking about last time. These, and one of the issues that you have when you're dealing with templates like these, you just got to be careful about how the template was built. For instance, this template was built where these are individual shapes and text features on each slide. This is not how I would have done this. If you were going to do this and have them linked, anyone remember from last week where you should do like permanent links that are always appearing on every slide? If no one remembers, that's okay.
No.
A
So you,
theme builder.
what's that?
You put it in the theme builder.
Yes.
you want-
Yep. It used to be called the slide master, and now it's called this edit theme. Because then what you would do is, if I did that, and if I did that here, and if I made those tabs, if I added my little rectangles on those tabs and made them link, then they would totally link every single time without me doing anything else.
And you got this from Slides Mania?
Yeah,
I-
Vivian got this one.
Oh, okay. Is that free?
Yeah.
Yeah. Slides
Okay.
Mania, Slides Carnival, Slides Go. Those are different sites that put up templates that are usually good for classrooms.
Okay.
you just have to
Slide
be-
Carnivals and Slides
Slide-
Mania.
Yep.
Slides Mania, Slide Carnival, and Slide Go.
Slide
Yeah.
Go. Okay, thank you.
You just have to be careful when you're working with them, because if you have something like this and you want to make those tabs linked, you're going to drive yourself crazy by copying and pasting and relinking on every slide. Things like those navigational tabs, you don't want to do here. Like with this, we should really copy this box and then edit the theme and put that box there, because then what that's going to do is then we also want to make sure that we edit the link on it, because then that way that will go to every single one, right? So the welcome is actually slide 3. I think I did that right. Then we apply to all. So then now we do this. Now, if you're in present mode, and we come down here, now if you click welcome, it jumps you back. These happen to be linked on that page, but you notice these aren't necessarily, or these are linked. So, but that one went to the wrong one. See how it says English and not Google Slides?
Yeah.
On the previous slide, it said Google Slides, but that's because you'd have to edit the way this is built as it is. You'd have to edit every single tab individually, unless you go into that edit theme, build your tab names and build your tab links.
And then
here.
just cut, once you have it built, just copy that slide over and over again.
No, you don't even need to.
Oh,
You don't even need to. If you do it in the theme, it's done.
oh,
It's like the background. It's on there
Sure.
forever. So which is
Okay.
why. So like if I come in here, so let me get out of this and I'll show you. There was that Google Slides one was a messed up one. So let's see. This one says Google Slides, right? So it was like this first page was created. So now if I'm going to copy that box. Now if I come down to further pages, like this one, right? Page 4 right now has nothing on there because none of those tabs were copy and pasted. But we don't need to copy and paste. If you go into edit theme, and I choose to do it, I gotta remember which color it was.
It was the brown.
It was the brown below the purple. Okay, so now if I come over here and I do edit theme, and I paste it right there,
And you go back and update it. It's
and
gonna
then I go
update it
back,
all.
now if I come over to like here, and I go to present, now it should show Google Slides on all of them. Oh, it didn't do it on that one. Oh, I know why I didn't do it on that one. Because when we did it, I'll slow down too. So when you're messing with the theme, I think I did it over here, right? You really want to do it up at the top one. This main top level one does everything for all the things in terms of theme and or in terms of title and bullet point looks and fonts. You'd want to go through and paste, because if I paste it just for here, it's just going to do it for this particular like style slide. So you'd want to make sure that you have it. See, I have it on this one. So I did it on this particular color and style of slide, but I didn't do it on this one. Now, if I paste it there, it'll show up on all those. Because
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and let me jump in because I was the creator of this Frankenstein.
So here, I'll
When
stop
you're-
so you can share yours if you want.
No, I was just gonna speak
Oh.
off of yours, but basically what I was gonna say is using a site like Slides Mania or Slides Go or Slides Carnival is great, except, whatever you select or borrow from them really needs to work with whatever it is that you're doing, right? Like sometimes you're better off just building your own. Sometimes, it is better to use what they had there. Like that, I played with that to use as like a 5th grade notebook for all students because we were virtual. So when you saw like English and science and math like on the side there, that was me fooling around with trying to figure out, would this work for a whole classroom? And it was also when I was just learning to use slides, right? So I think that is it's a great tool. You just have to be careful about, like, are you choosing something that's too not difficult, but like consuming for what it is you want to make? Do you know what I mean? Like in a classroom, sometimes like less is more, especially if you're using with young kids. Like I gave up on that and I decided to use it for this instead, because I realized young kids were going to have a hard time like navigating. So, my point is just like, when you see something and you get excited about it on a site like Google Slides, not Google Slides, I'm sorry, Slides Carnival or Slides Mania, just think about what it is you're trying to use it for, who your audience is, how they're going to use it, and how time consuming is it going to be for you to make it do what you want it to do, right? That became overwhelming and very time consuming for me. So I chose to let it go, but you can really go down a rabbit hole, as I learned.
And that's actually why we use that one for this class, because there's so many of those little bits and bobs that we can demonstrate how to copy and paste or how to use the slide master or the edit theme. Yeah, and you have to, like, we purposely use that one for this because it allows for us to have so many different or demonstrate so many of these different like customization possibilities.
And it's cool if you want to use it, and like sometimes like you're really into something and you don't mind investing like lots of time into doing it. But sometimes I find, especially for elementary school, middle school, even high school, like kids only, they want what's quick and easy, and so sometimes less is more.
No, I just like the tabs because like.
Yes,
in-
the
in
tabs
so-
are cool, absolutely. And like in a lot of, but there are other slides, there are other versions you could make, or you can even find online that are much easier
Okay.
than
Because
that.
like I do different, like one of the first things we do are the 5 themes of geography. So I could have 5 tabs, one for each theme, and they can click on it and take it. But I don't want to take up everybody's time, so I'll
No, no,
stop.
no. And my point is there are slideshows or presentation slides on those sites where each page of the notebook can, like, so if you wanted to do your 5 themes of social studies or whatever, like you can have a notebook where each page is one theme and kids don't have to scroll back and like
Mhm.
it just is cleaner.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's great if you want to use it, and by all means, I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm just saying, like, look around and play with things first, because you'll find a lot of times on different sites, you'll see it again in an easier, cleaner, more efficient way.
And if anything, it hopefully gets you thinking about what you want, like you said, and then you don't even need their theme. You build your own.
Right.
Like I have a ton of these, like, you know, Heathcote tutorials, and I was making them, and everyone was slightly different. So one day I just went through and I took all the looks that I wanted. I basically made a blank template, a slideshow for myself that I literally named like Heathcote tutorial template. And now anytime I go in, I just go make a copy of it. And then it has all the links on the master slide. It has all the title, like it has all of my sections and all of my stuff customized. Because once I realized what types of things I liked from all these different templates, I just made my own. And then I just reuse that, and it's already got, and then, you know, I might have to tweak something here or there because of whatever, but at least I know that like my little links are there, my little home buttons are there, my, like all those little things are set. Cool.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Erica Gutman. I won't call you Jason, even though it says Jason.
Thank you.
No
Hi.
problem.
So I missed last class also because of childcare
That's
issues.
okay.
But Kara and I are both speech therapists at Greenville, and Kara's in multiple buildings as well. But we wanted to create a classroom page as a resource for kids to go to at home, parents to go to, and also to use potentially, you know, for working with some kids, for other kids to be able to log on and do some work on the computer independently. So Kara, actually, I'm having trouble presenting at the moment.
I'm going to try to present.
Go for it.
Is it working?
It's trying to. There it goes. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
And I'm
So-
working on my Bitmoji as well.
So we started with the Greenville speech room to create the opportunity for the different areas that we might work on at the elementary level with articulation or fluency, language, social language, and trying to embed the links. Like Erica said, we're trying to have like her Bitmoji come onto the page, which she's working on. And then, so just putting in some, like with the fluency, opening up like another page that would also have different goals that we would be working on there as well. And then we were also kind of playing with different backgrounds too, if we wanted to change the layout of it. I don't know, the blank wall or the wall looking effect, if we wanted it more dynamic. I don't, so we had like just some suggestions that we were looking at and kind of playing with the idea of manipulating the background and then transferring some of the information as well onto there.
Yeah, and that's one of those things you have to sort of think about, dynamic or not, as a benefit or a hindrance, right? Like a blank textured white thing that looks just like has a little bit of texture to it might be more dynamic and engaging because it allows the words and stuff to pop out. If the background itself is like too crazy by itself, too dynamic, then it might overwhelm the actual content that's on the slide. So that's one of those things where as you're designing it, and that's all about audience, right? So if it's like younger kids, you might want to go really basic so that you're not distracting them with a ton of colors. You know, you might be able to add more elements when you're dealing with like middle school or high school or parents. You can have sort of different things in there because older minds and eyes can kind of discern things better. So yeah, you kind of have to play around with that. But just know that like generally often less is more. And you always want to make sure the content is standing out. And even though a lot of us deal with young kids and we think that everything needs to be colorful and stuff, often like 3 to 5 colors a page is it. Because then otherwise it gets a little bit too like rainbow, like it gets sort of muddled. And if you're consistent with those colors where it's like, you know, the standard, you know, expectations is always the same color, it starts to sort of build that recognition, almost like brand recognition of like if they say blue, oh, that's going to be something that's about expectations, you know, or if they see yellow, they know that that's going to be about the grading policy or whatever. And if you start sort of standardizing some of those color schemes and some of those kind of dynamic backgrounds or looks, that will then also help to reinforce what you're trying to get across the information, because people will start connecting visually to the content and sort of knowing what they're about to get into before they actually start reading the content. But I think that's a solid start.
Thank you.
So we jumped over Sarah. So would you like to show us what you got?
Sure. All right. So I kind of revamped one that I used last year for getting to know you. I kind of just had objects last time, and I had the students guess what the different objects meant about me, but this time I embedded or added the links and slides. So now it's more interactive, so they could actually click on it. So I have like where I went to school, the program I graduated from, if they're interested in that. I have like just fun links of things that I like, quotes from Wonder. I have the first unit that we do, so linking to another presentation. And what else do I have? Some of my animations that I made. So my own artwork, so the kids could see that. So kind of almost everything is now an interactive element up here.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
thanks. I could take you to, we can watch Bow. But yeah, that's it. So
Nice.
someone else mentioned this, like I'm not sure if I would have the students make their own or how much I would, like I do use Google Slides to make demos for my lessons, especially going hybrid last year. But I think it would be a good segue into like a self-portrait project to show I lost it. Oh, to kind of show this and then like use it to get them excited about like what's coming, like the next scene unit or something like that. That's very cool. I would just say, if you're worried about kids having access to your slides, just link it in presentation view or in the published to the web view, just so, because
Okay.
you know, kids and they may not mean to, but they'll click on something and change it or you know, change your work, and you probably don't want that.
Sure.
No, and that's great. Since you said you use this stuff and you may use this with kids, one of the nice things about this is you're really gaining that understanding of how much goes into it and sort of the rabbit hole that it could be. So then that allows you to then set your expectations for the kids of like, you have 1 week, 2 weeks, whatever it may be, you know what to expect out of that or what they're capable theoretically of doing in that time frame, knowing how long it took for you to build a bunch of links. You know, you may say, all right, listen, just give me 3 links, 3 objects, because you know that that's going to take them the requisite amount of time instead of having them do,
Mhm.
their own page. So that's what's also good about this for you guys, is just sort of just go through this process. It's like Vivian said earlier about like what template will work for students, or what'll be too difficult or too much, like too overwhelming for them. And that's what a lot of this process is about too, about for you to sort of see that and understand all those little elements that goes into it, to then kind of temper how you might throw this at students. And you could say, yeah, here's my example, but oh my God, this one took me 15 hours. Like yours is going to look like this. Yours is going to look like, this. And then that way they also just have an expectation of what's possible. And maybe a couple students go, hey, you know what, I'm going to work on it a ton and make it like that. Fine. But at least you kind of know the bounds to set.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah, thank
All
you.
right. So then, oh no, Carol went. Is it Wenhu? Did I pronounce that incorrectly?
One way.
Hung Wei. Sorry.
That's okay. So I didn't have a virtual classroom before. So I built it one. Let me just share. I built it one just this week. It's a new thing for me. I use Google Classroom a lot, so all of my stuff are like in Google Classroom. So our Google Slides for the class, different units, our like just everything is over there. So this one I kind of will use it as like a resource that like parents or maybe students just want to look for something, then they could come here to kind of look at it. So this is like the first page. So it has like all of my information. So for parents, students, they want to know my office, classroom, phone, emails. Oh, my email's wrong. So then they could kind of like come here to get the information. And then the second page, I have like a link for the homework. So this is the homework. So I have like all of the classes I teach, like level 1 to AT. So if you're in level 1, you go here, let me just present. You go here and you click on it, and then it will bring you to like the homework page. So I update this page so they could take a look at what they're supposed to do every day, and also like their parents. And then the third page, I built a page for extra help, because I at the high school, like last year, every Wednesday before we went back to in person, every Wednesday is kind of like an extra day, extra help day. So like we have like a certain time that I was supposed to help students for their work. So I kind of built this like a Google calendar.
Slots.
So
Yeah, that's
they
awesome.
go here and then they click the slot and then they put on their name. Then like we know that like I reserved the time slot for them. So I don't know what the schedule's gonna be. So I just like kind of like create like a
Mhm.
new one for just tonight. And that's pretty much of it for now. And then the last page, I do have a question. My plan is to use this virtual classroom as a resource for them. So I put on like all of the little things that I use in my classroom, like Edpuzzle, Padlet, Flipgrid, like all of the things that I usually use in my classroom. But my problem is like I usually create the assignment for a specific class, let's say for my AT class, and then I will post the link of that assignment in my Google Classroom, so that like when they go to their Google Classroom, they can just like click the link directly, then it will bring them to the assignment. So I just don't know if I should kind of like create this page and kind of like maybe give them another, I don't know, way for them to go to those.
What you could do is, this could just be a general, since this might be a resource page that's also looked at by parents, you
Okay.
could have it just linked to like Quizlet.com, edpuzzle.com, just so somebody who goes there can see what the platform is about.
Okay.
You would still put the super direct specific class link in the Google Classroom assignment.
Okay.
But this could just be a sense of if somebody, let's say you have somebody who's new to Scarsdale, says, I don't know what this teacher's using. What are these platforms? Maybe they come here, they go, oh, what's Kahoot about? They can click on it, goes to like Kahoot.com. They can at least get a sense of the type of platform that it is. And you might add something, a little box at the bottom that says like specific assignment links for these platforms can be found in your, specific Google Classroom or something like that.
Okay. It's Cool.
And that way people know that this is just sort of a, hey, this is the stuff that we use, but the actual assignment is going to be somewhere else.
It can also be like a redundancy for kids, right? Like they could click on Kahoot and sign in and then find the assignment. Is that possible?
I don't know, because like for those like very specific ones, sometimes I use just like, for example, Kahoot, I just use it in classroom, so they don't really have like the link to
Right.
the assignment. But like Quizlet is different. I will usually give them the link so that they could actually practice at home. So
Right.
it depends on like the platform that I
see.
Right,
use.
totally. Because like I think Edpuzzle, you could actually link to a Google Classroom. So when the student logged in, it would take them to their actual Edpuzzle assignment for their particular class.
Okay, thank you.
How did
Cool.
you find a lot of those backgrounds? They're fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the calendar was amazing.
Yeah,
I
where
don't
did you
know.
find them?
Which one? The background?
Yeah.
I just like Google it and then just like get like whatever that pops up.
That's generally how good things happen. Is you go, I don't know, I hit a button, things come up, and I went with it. No, it looks good. And then I use the appointment slots at Heathcote. That's how teachers book me. So the appointment slots is great to see that you're using that with students
Yeah,
for
it's
that
super
time.
convenient.
Yeah. The only other thing I might say is, Adam showed earlier how he has his sort of daily assignments as a Google slideshow. You have it as a doc. It could be, I don't know how that works with the high school dynamic, is if you had a Google slideshow, you could literally have like one file for each period with like one slide for each day. Just a thought. Like it may not work in your dynamic, but sometimes using a Google Doc gets messy because you'll have so many of them, or the doc will be so super long, where slides can sometimes be easier just because it looks a little cleaner, and you can always kind of put the first one at the top and stuff. Just something to think about. All right, Devin, you got something to throw down?
I do.
Nice.
I wasn't here last week. I was coaching, but I'm Devin Hoover. Everybody, I teach elementary phys ed at Quaker Ridge Elementary School. So I started using Google Slides quite a bit last year in our virtual teaching. It was a great way for us to lesson plan and the stuff we were doing, because it kind of, trying to teach a physical subject through a computer screen without becoming an aerobics teacher or a step teacher or, a fitness instructor was difficult. So bouncing around from asynchronous to synchronous to all the other things we went through, I found that the Google Classroom or the virtual classroom setting was really helpful to us. And then once we came back in person, and I was seeing kids obviously outside and in our physical space, all these things that we learned how to do over the last year, I'm like, well, how do I keep them in our program? Like, how do we bring Google Classroom into what we're gonna go back to, and some of these other things that we're using, Flipgrid and some of the other things, we really want to kind of hang on to some of this technology stuff. And then we started running into the problem, we don't have any substitutes. So if we're out, what do the kids do? Whether it was a teacher's prep or not, the kids needed some sort of asynchronous work or something like that. So I decided to build my virtual classroom as an asynchronous assignment home for now, and use some of the stuff that we've done over the past year. So when I share my screen, Chris, you're gonna have to help me out here.
You got it.
Yeah. All right. So is there a gray box in the middle of it right now?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. So I had some issues towards the end of the year that we had trouble resolving, but anyways, here we go. So here's my little virtual gym, and I threw on the first page just some quick instructions of how to navigate through the page, and basically it was so if I'm out and we're using Google Classroom, I can assign a class some asynchronous work so they can have activities, that type of thing. Or if we just wanted to have them branch out and be able to have resources at home to some of the things that we're teaching, then here it lies. So just click on any Coach Hoover Bitmoji for an asynchronous activity, and then each one of them will bounce you to a different slide where we had some different themes. So whether it was some warm-up activities and these are all just YouTube links, and we had some Cami stuff in here and some other seesaw assignments and healthy habits. So we kind of, when our lessons kind of try to run the gambit of health, wellness, physical activity. Picking up from that video I watched last week of embedding one of these things in to get us back to the homepage. That was pretty cool in managing the theme. So awesome tool to learn. And I've never built a virtual classroom stack like this. We've always completed just like a slide and shared the interactive slide with kids. So this is the first time I've done like a stack type thing. And then each one takes you to a different lesson in a different home where the kids can bounce around. They can check out, our movement of the day, movement preps, and, whatever our lesson focus was, our mind-body connection. So they get a little bit of everything. And then always click on that button, go back to the home screen. So pretty straightforward.
Cool.
Neat.
And-
Did you use this, Devin, just when we were out of school, or did you also use it like when, like, let's say you were teaching, like everybody was in like this year, and you didn't have a sub. Did your kids use that then as well?
Slippery slope, because in the elementary schools, they built in a prep to the morning for all the teachers while we were doing arrival duty. So technically, if they really ran into bind, they said, well, the teacher already had their prep, so they just don't have PE that day. And then depending on the restrictions, how close they were in the classroom, they couldn't raise their heart rates in the classroom. So outside of a health lesson, and I'm not a certified health teacher, what kind of asynchronous work were we getting? We're just really in a bind. So this was a lot of the stuff that at home, like we were using.
Okay, I was just curious because, right, like we were all living that life where, sometimes there wasn't coverage for you, but
Right.
that just seemed like such a smart way because, kids, I'm sure, were heartbroken if they couldn't have PE that day, right? Like
Right.
every kid loves PE. So I was just curious if you use that, like.
Well, to be honest with you, so we use Google Slides as our lesson plan format. So when we would get on, and I have both of Chris's kids, so we would get on to meet with the kids in Zoom. That was when I would share a screen, it would be one of those lesson plan formats, and we would talk to the kids about the lesson focus, and we would watch a quick video on something, and then boom, we would get up and get moving, and then we'd come back and we would focus on whatever our healthy habit was, whether it was hygiene or sleep habits, and we watch a quick YouTube video that we found on some of those things, and then if we had a seesaw assignment to support it, it all lived in that Google Slide document, that virtual classroom document, which was more visually appealing to the kids than staring at me in my living room, through different phases of our quarantines and stuff like that. So, and then if I ever had to share sub plans, if I wasn't there, it was a Google Slide, and I would share it through either their Google Classroom or their Seesaw.
Yeah, no, that's great. I was just
Yeah.
curious. It was just a little question, but I love your.
It does bring up a very like real world sort of example of this. Is like, even if you get to the point where you're like, yeah, there's not, maybe middle school, high school, it's a different vibe where the kids aren't sort of so much into it. But if we get locked down or if something changes, this could be something to kind of, re-engage them and kind of bring them back in, because it is something that, they may have done as fifth graders last year. Now they're in the middle school or things like that. So these are also nice, even if you end up deciding that this is not really something you're going to do a ton with, it's a good sort of back pocket tool to have in the event of, oh, it looks like we have to shut for 3 days. You're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to dust off that virtual classroom, make a couple of quick changes to the date, and be like, hey, kids, we're going to do something fun and different while we're at home. And it allows you to kind of have that little, toolkit of things that you can, you don't have to lean on as heavily as we did last year or even the original spring, but a good fallback. Nice. Kimberly.
Hi. So I was trying to get on like last time, but I was at like my other job and like the internet connection was terrible. So I kept like going in and out, was glitching, I just got booed off. But I don't have
Totally
anything to
fine.
share right now, like physically, but I had some ideas and I just wanted to bounce off other people because I'm the special ed teacher for first and second grade at Sealy. And so I'm kind of like the consultant, so I bounce between both grades. So I don't have like a lot of like the content, but things that I want to do to help and support the students with the special needs. So I was thinking like including their daily schedules and special schedules, providing Google Meet links. I know that was like really hard this past year for them. I want to try to figure out a way, and maybe you guys could help me to put their win schedules, because that was like hard for the parents and for the students, but also make sure that it's private for specific student viewing. I was also thinking of doing like a calm down corner online where students can do puzzles or have like brain break activities that they could do on their own and access independently, do calm down music, or there was like a cool thing that like I know students love is watching like the live zoo cameras that they could do for like 5 minutes with like a timer. I also helped with like a lot of accommodation modifications with students who struggle with reading, so I recorded the workbooks, because I know for math problems, like they couldn't read that, but they knew how to do the math concepts. So I recorded like myself reading the problems. So that's something that I want to include on that as well.
So I would, the first question is about the access and the privacy, right? Because aside from just the schedules and stuff, talking about having them access the files, having them access videos, whatever. So the first question would be, is Edgemont using like the Google sign-in accounts with the youngest kids? Like, do you know that?
I know they don't have email, but they have access to
Like
their own Google accounts.
Okay, so which is great, because like same thing in Scarsdale. So like our K1 and 2 kids don't have the email inboxes on, but we're able to share things with them via Drive, or they can log into things with a Google account.
Yeah.
So what that means is when you share a file, let's say with the classes, you don't have to share it publicly. You could literally share it with the share button with all the student email addresses. They won't get notified. Like, don't send the notification. There's that little box in the share that says send notification. Don't do that, because you'll get a whole bunch of bounce back messages, but they'll still have access to it. Meaning if they go to your public Google slideshow and they click the link for the schedule that launches a second Google slideshow, as long as they're logged into Chrome, they'll be able to see it. If a parent went to that slideshow, logged in as the parent, they would see the public one, click here to see the schedule, then they would be told to log in or that they don't have access.
Okay.
So that's the way you can manage access. As long as the kids are logging in with their Google accounts, then you can share it just with those student accounts. Even though they don't have email, it doesn't matter. They'll still get access to the file. They just won't be notified about it. Because then that's also then goes to like, you could create videos on YouTube that you put on YouTube. And if they were super specific to the students, YouTube videos have the same ability as Drive files, where you guys could share it with just a specific set of people. Like, you can make them public, private, unlisted, which is basically public, just nobody can find it unless you're given the link. But you can make it private and then share it with a bunch of email addresses. So same thing, those kids could then go theoretically to YouTube if they're allowed to sign into YouTube. I don't know what Edgemont does with that.
Would Hapara or a platform like that be like if they have access to Hapara?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, and it depends on how you guys are using Drive. So like, we don't use Hapara in K and 1. Only our second graders do. So like, we wouldn't be able to use that in a 1-2 environment. Do you guys in Edgemont use Hapara?
Never.
You know what that is? So they know. So yeah, I mean, and it's like, you'll have to play around with sort of that permission thing, but you might do something like a bunch of people have done, where there's like one small slideshow of a bunch of different resources, and that's public. So a parent could click on it and everything's fine. But then when you get to like a secondary slideshow that has student specific information, you link that on the public slideshow, but that second slideshow with the student specific information is only shared with those specific students and teachers and whomever else. You can even set it when you share it to just Edgemont, meaning anybody with an Edgemont ID could see that slideshow if you felt like it, just not external people. And that would probably be the way to navigate that.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem. Marina, what's up?
Right, I think it's gonna work this time. Okay.
If not, we got one more person to go before you fix it. So,
And let's hope.
no,
Okay.
I'm just good.
One second. Let me just go to present mode and then share. So as I mentioned, I did similarly where I just created like one slide with a bunch of things linked. Let me, can you see it?
Mhm.
All right, great. So I still have a bunch to continue to link. So this class that I'm going to be teaching next year is a new section for me. So I still have to collaborate with some colleagues and, work on the syllabus and like obviously office hours are to be determined, all that stuff. I created a couple like Duolingo pages, Duolingo classrooms, because I use that. So those are linked there. This link will go like straight to emailing me. This will go to my teacher website on Google Sites. This is my schedule. Also other items to like need, fixing. Word reference obviously is like a translation tool. Here are linked the textbook and workbook pages. I still, when I get to school, have to scan certain units and certain lessons, but everything will go there. So I'll just show you. You go to the workbook, it opens up a Drive folder with all the units. So if you go to like unit 3, you have workbook lesson 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and they're just all PDF files. So you can easily like find the activity and the page number and things like that. What else? This is like just a poster. It's like the path to proficiency when it comes to like novice language learners. So it just like goes through it here. Just another PDF I have in Drive. This is the like 5 C's, or we'll call them like the world readiness standards of, world language. So they can always access that. I also give them a hard copy of what is this like proficiency folder, of just a lot of resources that are the everyday kind of Spanish, like que hora es, just like a template to show how to tell time. So it's like a bunch of, the like usual resources and stuff.
And you're middle school, right? 7th grade?
Yeah.
And
So
you
next year
guys,
I'll have 7th, 8th, and 9th, actually.
and then Edgemont uses Cami, right?
Yeah, they have access to Cami. Mhm.
Yeah, so that's why, and it's good that you have those in PDFs, because then with something like Cami, they can have those access. They can make copies of those things for themselves, or you can actually like assign those in Cami and let them sort of mark them up and annotate them and stuff like that.
I like the oh wait, no, sorry, let me go to the can do benchmarks. So these are, again, I only like scanned the first novice to intermediate kind of levels, because they're not even going to get to the advanced by 7th and 8th grade. So where they can like almost self-assess in these I can statements. So they can, put a star next to it, and like every time they open this, they can like date it, just put like a date at the top and see at this point, like, where do you feel you are when it comes to interpersonal communication or things like that. And I actually have another bigger PDF with like even more can do statements within each of these little sections. So I might even link that as well. But I plan to like continue to add things to this list.
I love your slide. I was thinking, as a student, like especially like a middle schooler, where sometimes, organization can be an issue. Finding you have, kids are managing now a lot more things in every subject. So having like a slide like this where you can say to them, everything you need is on that slide.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you ever have a question, start there, like giving them a place to start solving their own problems and answering their own questions is awesome. And those benchmarks are also great, because even if you have to have like a mini conference with a kid or even a parent, right? Like being able to access that benchmark right away and say, so let's think about, this student, this is, where I'm seeing them, and this is where they fall on the benchmark. Like it's just so, it's so clear and so easy and so informative obviously not just for you, but for the parent or student that you're talking to. I love it. I think
Yeah,
that's
it's a good like scale also, and just like for conversation purposes as well. I was thinking of like linking Google Classroom and other things, but again, like it would have to be linked to a different period. And then, so I don't know if either I'll make a copy of this slide for each of my periods and then edit those links so they, they are appropriate to each of my periods.
Or
but-
just, the link could just go to classroom.google.com.
Right, right,
And when the student clicks on it, they'll only see their classes.
right. Yeah, I'll probably do that. I'll probably do it somewhere near the computer.
Cool.
And then what else I had like labeled here that I wanted to add, but when it comes to like our class library, we still have to, as a team, like decide like what books or what resources we're going to link there. And like I said, the curriculum will have a lot of like the student expectations, the curriculum, the units that we'll cover, and things in there. So that when that's finalized, that'll be linked there. That's it.
Cool. Nice.
Thanks.
All right, Shelby.
Oh.
Wait, I have to stop sharing, don't I?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I did not have a virtual classroom before. Last year, as I mentioned last week, I did everything. I just used Google Classroom for everything. The year before, which I didn't mention, I did everything on my teacher page, which was accessible to not just the students, but to the parents. But I feel like the virtual classroom is kind of a nice way to have it in the same, sorry, my dogs are barking. The virtual classroom will have everything that they need, but also not just the students, but the parents, plus add the visual appearance piece to it. So I will share my screen now. I started first with a very simple one. Let's see if I did this right. Did I do it right? Yes?
Yep, you're all good.
Oh, okay. So this was like, I was just thinking about like, okay, grade 3. By the way, I teach Spanish for those that I didn't meet last week. Green Acres Elementary School grades 2 through 5. So grade 3, for example, only had Spanish last year. I was kind of thinking that this would be the resource page. So I just started with the different topics we covered last year in second. So alphabet, for example, and that link, if you go into presentation mode, that link is, it just goes to a song, and which is the song that the kids know because this is the one that we do in class. So
that face
of course there's an ad.
that is usually covered by her phone.
Well, anyway, it goes to the song that they know that they practice with. And then the same thing for numbers. There's a song there. Same thing for colors. Same thing for weather. These are all links to different songs on YouTube, or in this case, I think this one here is a different program. Oh, it's still through YouTube, Rockalingua. And it takes them to Que Tiempo Hace Hoy. And then finally, let's review. This is an asynchronous assignment where if they clicked on it, they would be taken into quizzes, which is a program I use a lot, where it's basically a game. They start the game and they answer questions to cover all those topics. So whatever, just an example. Then I started thinking that maybe I wanted to make it a little bit more, this one's really simple. Then I thought maybe I want to break it down by, instead of having the link go to like a video or an activity, maybe I want it to go to another slide with lots of activities. So I started playing around with one for 4th grade, but instead I did it by topic. So for example, if we're in the Costa Rica unit and they want to practice with that,
I like how you're
this
falling
one
off
here.
the bridge. That's fine.
And I'm dropping my pineapple. So this just brings them to Quizlet vocab. So if they click on the toucan, it says haz clic aquí. So click here, they click there, and it brings them to the Quizlet vocabulary for the animals that they have to learn. El ocelote, el jaguar, etc. And then if they click on it says, "Ay, mi piña," my pineapple, click on the pineapple to practice with the fruits of Costa Rica. And then if they click on the pineapple, it's linked to the quiz, same thing, just the Quizlet, but this time with the fruits.
Nice.
And yeah, so I was just playing around. I'm still really trying to think of how I'm gonna organize this. I have you, as you called it last week, the breadcrumb is my little Spanish flag right there, which will bring them back to the main page. So if they were going to a different topic, La Escuela, that's another topic we cover. It's the school subject topic where they're talking about the different school subjects and their likes and dislikes. Math is boring, science is fun. That unit, I was starting to play around with that just to see how I could do it. So I'm kind of in the beginning stages.
Oh, and that's awesome. And again, that's a lot of what this is about. It's just like sort of exposing the possibilities and like sort of letting people see like how it functions and directions to go. And it's obviously going to be used for different people in different ways, right? Like, you know, if you're a bridge special ed teacher, you know, first and second grade, you're going to use it differently than a fifth grade classroom teacher might, you know, and if you're the speech, you know, resource room teachers, you might use it differently. And that's fine. And then like you may use it with kids too. And you're like, oh, the kids have loved building their own. Or you may realize what goes into it. And you're like, all right, no, this is good for like, you know, those sort of quarantine days, snow days, substitute lesson plan days, but I'm going to like put my focus elsewhere. Like any of those are fine. It's about sort of then understanding and making an informed decision based on.
And the
the
great part
experience.
about the tech piece for even, you know, for kids is that, you know, if they are still acquiring language, either a foreign language or our language, you can just use an image, right? Everybody understands the 1, 2, 3 image. Everybody understands the ABC image, or, you know, you can adapt it for whatever the needs of your kids are. So even if they don't have a lot of Spanish words, right? They, you know, just the picture is enough. Oh, you know, oh, I dropped they may not know the word for pineapple, but as soon as they see it, you know, they know what it is you're talking about.
Cool. Any last questions about,
These were great.
yeah, or thoughts
Really,
about
really cool.
the classroom vibe? Everyone's good. All right, so we're going to switch gears to the virtual escape room. And we'll let Miss Robert kick off with this because she's the sort of lunatic who came up with this idea.
Yes. So I do feel like Dr. Frankenstein here. So I not this past spring, but the spring before, you know, when we were all like kind of looking for resources and, you know, things to do with kids when we had to be virtual, I came across so many people who had done escape rooms, and I called Chris and I said, oh, I want to do this escape room. He said, great, call me when you figure it out.
Because let's also preface by saying I've seen people do these escape rooms in person with boxes and locks in rooms, like in basements of places like as drinking events. How can we do one of those in April of 2020 when
Without the
everyone's at
drinking,
home?
right?
Right. Where nobody can go anywhere. I'm like,
So,
that's a
but
new one.
so, you know what? It was great. And, you know, I'm mostly kidding when I said, you know, he said, go figure it out. He's
we
like,
figured it out. we figured it out.
My point is there are lots of ways to do this, and I'll show you one way, a way that we figured out to do. And you may look at this and say, oh my gosh, this is too involved. However, when we taught this class last year, somebody came up with another way, an easier way of just using slides and links, and I'll talk about that next. So let me share my screen. Let's see.
And actually just doing that, just a quick background, if anyone doesn't know what an escape room is, traditionally you go into a room, a literal room, like somewhere, and you have clues, you get locked in, and there's clues, and you got to follow these clues to get different keys to unlock yourself. In education, they're often a literal box of connected padlocks, and all the padlocks, there's different clues to unlock the code for each of the padlocks until you eventually get into the actual box where there's the final prize. So our sort of task was to figure out how to create a virtual or digital version of an escape room that kids could do independently during quarantine or potentially together in person.
Right. And so the thinking is obviously we don't want them to progress until they've completed each task, right? That was kind of the point. So I made this in June, not this past June, but the June before, as obviously a virtual activity, and it was to review the math we had done for the year. So I gave them a little backstory, right? The true but terrifying tale of a math adventure gone wrong. And like the kid, so the fifth grade teachers were lured into the dungeon by the order of operations, and they vowed never to release them unless the kids completed the puzzle. So like, it's fun for the kids to have, just a little bit of backstory. They love the idea of an adventure and they're solving a mystery and a puzzle. So they click again, and this is the entrance, right? Ask the skull to guide you if you dare. The entrance to the chamber is only 13 steps away. So, right, they click on the skull to get the information and tips, right? So this is just like, creating this part was just like creating the virtual classroom. It's a series of linked, slides and information. So here I had instructions and tips. So everything I wanted them to do and have. Draw on the math concepts you learned this year. The progression goes from easy to challenging. Don't get discouraged. Keep trying. Puzzles are linked in the objects around the dungeon. So, and they had to find the links and access them in the correct order. And I'll show you that in a minute. You'll need the codes to progress. Calculators aren't allowed. And submit the Google form. So this was the layer on top, right? This idea of the Google form. So if you think about this escape room as being mostly like a virtual classroom with links, but to get to the next level, so to speak, you had to fill out a Google form correctly. So this takes them back to the door, and now they had to figure out how to get into the place they're trying to escape from, right? And of course, the entrance is only 13 steps away. So the riddle here is that 1, 7, and 5 equal 13. So if you click on it, right, there I am stuck in the dungeon. Most of them wanted to leave me there, but oh, how I wish somebody could get me out of here. So they knew they had to click on some of these different images to get to the first puzzle. So like I'll click on the lantern, and this is puzzle 4. So they knew they had to find puzzle 1. So they couldn't do that one. So they had to go back. Is this puzzle 1? I don't remember where puzzle 1 is. Maybe this one? Nope. That's puzzle 2. So here you'll see, right? It says math review escape room 2. There's some information here. Do not use any commas or units in your answer. So they can't do puzzle 2 no matter what they do, because they have to get the code at the end of puzzle 1. Once they complete puzzle 1, they're given a code. And once they get the code, they type that code in to start puzzle 2. That's how you kind of get to the next level. Does that make sense?
I have a question. How do you generate a code after? Is it like another Google form?
So let me show you. So let me go back, right? So now I just have to find where puzzle 1 is. Is this puzzle 1? Now I don't remember where puzzle 1 is. There we go. Alrighty. So they have to do these puzzles, right? So they have to fill in each of the answers. When I think about place value, it's important for me to remember that each place is multiplied or divided by this amount, depending on if I move right or left, right? So they get it right. they have to go, they have to go all the way through, right? And when they finally get to the end, it says, congratulations, here's the code to puzzle 2. But they can't go forward. Oh, is my microphone blocked? Anyway, they can't go forward until they get, right? So if I put 23 as my answer and I hit next, they get a notification that's incorrect. They have to try again, right? So they get all the way to the end and they get a, so hold on, because I have, oh, so this was the problem I was having, Chris. I was looking for the answer key in my Google Docs, right? Here's the escape room folder, and it keeps saying, it keeps coming up. Oh, here.
I had
I
this
had-
problem this week, and
I had the same problem too.
Yeah, I ended
How
up
am I
quitting.
not-
So
quit
there, yes.
Chrome and then came back in.
And then what you should do too is I'll show you a trick. Like, so usually up in the top right hand corner by your little head, it'll say update if there's needed an update, the one above that. But it doesn't say update. But sometimes you actually do need an update. So if you click the 3 little dots, this is a little bit of a trick for everyone. To click the 3 little dots. If you
Yeah.
go to help,
Yeah.
and then you go about Google Chrome. Sometimes even if there's like a gap in the ghost in the machine, whatever, sometimes what'll happen is, see, like there's an update. See how you get the little like sad face
Yeah.
thing. Even when you went to the Chrome help, that means there's an update. Your browser just has been updated. So what you should do is you should quit the browser and then
Oh.
relaunch the browser. And while
Okay.
they're doing that, I'll sort of give some background context for this. So
I'll see it.
everything is in Google Forms. And you would make, in her case, she made 4 Google Forms. And what is really nice about Google Forms is that you can do things like restrict the answers to very specific information. You can also change the like you've submitted this form answer. So what I'll do is show you briefly what sort of some of the basics for setting this up. So in my drive, if I made a new Google form, and we'll call this 602. You know, right? What is 5 plus 2? Now, when you do this, you're going to want, you can either do check boxes or multiple choice, right? Where they got to choose one of the answers, depending on obviously the level of the question. It doesn't have to be math. It could be anything, right? It could be language. You can ask them a question in Spanish and they have to put in the right answer. It gets a little bit tricky because one of the things you can do is if you do short answer, obviously there's going to be multiple answers for this, right? There's going to be the number 7. There's going to be SEVEN. There's going to be capital SEVEN. Those are all technically different answers. So what you have to do is you have to do with this 3 little dots here in the bottom, what's called response validation, and basically like require it to be something. And that's why when it got to the end, when she was working on like puzzle 2, 3, and 4, she had that little disclaimer at the top that said, don't use commas or dashes or anything. It was because she put the validation in to be exactly like number, you know, you can do not equal to, it has to be the number 7. That's it. That means if they wrote SEVEN, then the answer would be wrong. And that's how with anything you can, I mean, you can set that for language where it has to be text and it has to either contain, doesn't contain email. Like, so you can decide like how much, it's not necessarily be as specific as like the exact letters, but you could decide for yourself how, you know, what do you want in it? Like what should it contain? What should it not contain? And then they can get a yes or a no or a go on from that. And then that's how you basically create that. So that what happens is when she made that second form, essentially the answer to that question, when it says, what is the code? every code was basically a number, and she just put the, like, you know, let's say that was the code for the second one. If the student didn't put in that exact code in that second form, they wouldn't get to the next question of the second form. So that's like the stopgap measure to prevent them from going.
Okay, so if we're at the perfect spot, so let me just show you guys, right? So here we go. They got to the, let's say they got to the end of puzzle 1. They answered all the questions correctly, right? This is what would show up. You did it, you unlock the puzzle to get the code, submit this form to get the code. They would hit submit, right? And it would say, congratulations, here's your code, 091572. And so they would take that code, right? And if we go back to the escape room for a second, let's see, go back.
And that's that code that when puzzle 2 launches and it says put the code in, that's where they have to put that 918762 in order to get to the next question. And that's where that response validation is so important, because you make that response validation be number equals. So obviously it works a little bit better or a little bit easier with numbers, because you can be super specific, because numbers has equals to, whereas the text is just contain or doesn't contain. So that's a little bit, you sort of have to play around with that and kind of practice and see how accurate it's going to be for your purposes, especially as a foreign language teacher.
I think that my question is, how do you get that last, like, congratulations, here is your code to appear, like when you finish?
So
Another, go ahead, Chris, sorry.
oh, that's okay. So in when you're building a form, one of the things you can do is and where is it? It's one of the things under, it's not under settings. It used to be under settings, but it's not under settings. It's under, I'll find it. Give me 1 second. You go ahead, Vivian, and then I'll tell you.
I'm just, look, oh, here's escape room number 2, right? They found the next puzzle, and here they would put in the code that they got from number 1, 091572. They would put it in, and so next. So that's how they open the next door. And so now they get like harder problems for escape room 2. And again, they would have to go all the way to the end. So I learned later that a smart thing to do is to have a table with answers, right? So puzzle 1, these are all the answers with the code. Puzzle 2, these are all the answers, and then the code at the end, so that I can, you know, when they say to me, I kept putting in the right answer and it wouldn't let me through. And you would say, oh, well, what were you putting for a number 2? You know, I was putting 30. Well, that's why, because 30 is still incorrect. So, you know what I mean? Like, so you could help them problem solve and troubleshoot. And also having the code handy is also was also helpful. So the truth is, it sounds confusing and convoluted, but once you got started, it was easy. You're making this escape, you know, you're making like this virtual room. You have these images and they're linked to different Google Forms, and they have to complete each form and put in a code to get to the next one to the end. What was nice about this as a last week activity is that it took them several days to complete, right? So it ended up being like this fun, challenging, week-long, you know, activity that allowed them to review the year's assignments and lessons while doing something cool and fun. And, you know, because at the end of each form, you know, like there were like fireworks or something, and like they would get the next code and they would have to put in the code. And then when they completed the whole thing, I would tweet out, you know, Chris Casal completed the, well, not his last name, but Chris, you know, from 5 Robert completed the math escape room challenge, you know, and like made a big deal about it. And they were very excited. That's one way to do it. Last year when we offered this course, another teacher came up with a version of it. It was Jen Chung, I think, if you remember, Chris. And what she did was she kind of used the choose your own adventure format as a way of doing it. And so I'll do that for a second. Let me go back here. Let's go to choose your own. Oh, this was no. What did I call it? Mhm. Here we go. All right, it doesn't matter. I'll find it in the link is in here somewhere.
And what we can do is as she's going through that, I'll take over. I'll give you a second to find that.
Thanks.
And then what I'll do is we'll talk for a second just about some of the technical aspects of the Google form, just as you're thinking about this. So now, in addition to the Google form, this is actually going to be really like 3 things or 4 things. So in order to keep yourself organized, you're going to think about, all right, there's multiple forms. Now, Vivian made, 5 or 6 with a whole bunch of questions in that. You don't necessarily, you're going to go as deep or as long as you think is appropriate for your students and your content. You're going to have at least 2, because otherwise, they want to be able to unlock the next thing. So you'd want to have a folder that's just for the escape room, so then you can organize all your things in there. So you'll have a folder for the escape rooms. You'll have like a couple of forms. You should have a Google Doc, like Vivian said, where you have the answers or like your own key for the actual answers to the questions plus the code. Then the sort of 5th thing would be that Google Classroom style, or not Google Classroom, the virtual classroom style Google slideshow, where you would put the links. But that kind of comes at the end. It's more about building that infrastructure of your slides. So we talked real quick about like the number with the validation. And then obviously you'd make them required. Now, the way she had them go on is essentially they were all different sections. So when you do the plus, you're just adding an extra question. You're going to see all of them. You're not going to see one at a time. What you want to do is you want to add these different sections, which is sort of down here on the bottom right. Because what'll happen is you have these different sections, and then what you can do is you can set, what it goes to, right? Like, let me just get rid of this. You can do like go to section based on answer, right? So if the answer is correct, it goes to the next section. If the answer is wrong, it doesn't. You can have it skip, so you can decide like this is that choose your own adventure type of thing where you can build these different sections, and if they answer it incorrectly, they go to section 2, which gives them an easier question. Let's say section 1, the next section would be the whatever, like the going down the path.
I would say that's much more advanced, like for your
Right.
first.
No, totally. And like, yeah. So there's options of, I'm just sort of showing that like, it's not, this is kind of how you start building these things where it's not like seeing all the questions all at once. And then just to answer that question before we switch back to the choose your own adventures, up in the gear, if you go to presentation, the confirmation message, this is where you would add the code. Say, congratulations, you've unlocked it. Like, here's the code for your next puzzle. And then your second form starts out with what was the code with the response validation on to be exactly that number or that statement or whatever it is.
Right, exactly.
Are you ready to show that choose your own adventure?
I am. So
swap out.
Awesome, thank you. So certainly the Google Forms is one way to do it. So last year, like I said, there was another person taking a class who made something very similar by making a choose your own adventure. So this is a sample of a choose your own adventure that I made And actually I did it just for this class, but I also made some for kids with their reading work, because we all read those like choose your own adventure books and love them, and kids today love them as well. So choose your own adventure. It's another beautiful morning here in Rhode Island. I wake to the sound of waves crashing on the beach. Time to make a plan for my day. Should I take my breakfast down to the beach and watch the sunrise, or should I be productive and go for a jog, right? So where they go next, what happens next in the adventure is based on what choice gets made, right? Now, this could very easily be adapted with, you know, a picture in a background. She had like a math candy store, and it had, you know, like a question, and there was a correct answer and an incorrect answer. This was for second grade, right? So the incorrect answer took you to a review of that content at where, so, you know, if you had, you know, if you had 3/7 minus 2/7, and you got 1/7 as your answer, like you could choose that, and then she would have an incorrect, you know, 5/7. And if you chose the incorrect one, it would take you to a page that explained adding and subtracting fractions or something like that, right? So let's say we choose breakfast. As I lay my blanket down on the sand and unpack my breakfast, I spy a bottle sticking up out of the sand. At first, I ignore it and eat my delicious egg sandwich as the sun rises. Its rays bounce off the glass and draws my eye. I think I see a slip of paper in the bottle. Could it be a message, right? So do I pick up the bottle and read the message, or do I ignore it and head home, right? I pick it up as I make, oh, did I screw it up? Oh, I chose read the message. I linked it wrong. Anyway, I come across a cave entrance. I never noticed before. How strange. I wonder where it leads. I should head back. The others are waiting for me. I decide to search the cave. Oh, so I had it linked incorrectly. I pick up the bottle. I pull out a sheet of paper inside. It's a very old and stained. It looks like a map of Rhode Island. I look closely and find a green X directly over Charlestown, where we live. I turn the map over and I find a handwritten note. Next page. Where will it go? Did I not finish? That might be it. So basically, right, you can have each page linked to, or each button that I made linked to a different slide in the slideshow, continuing that story. So you can make an escape room in that same way, right, using that same idea of, instead of making Google Forms, like for lower grades, right, where that might be a little more challenging, just making that linked button and having it take you to a different slide might be another way to go. Does that make sense to everybody? So I would say, like, for the upper grades, figuring, like, it will take a while with the Google form, but the kids are so entranced by it. They get so invested, and they, you know, want to see their name tweeted out, or, you know, whatever it is that you end up doing. Like, even if you make a bulletin board and, like, you know, a star gets put up with their name for completing the adventure, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But the kids loved it. I used it again this year, and you know, all the fifth grades used it, and the kids were like, you know, they would call each other at night to talk about the puzzles, and they had a great time with it. So the forms are definitely like one way to go. And of course it kind of lends itself to, you know, hard facts and data, right? Like numbers makes it super easy, like to just, you know, it's the right answer or it isn't, and you just move along. But certainly the choose your own adventure format and style that gets linked to a different slide is another way that works just as well, but it might just be easier for younger kids, or if you're certainly doing like foreign language something like that, that might be helpful.
I was just gonna say that the choose your own adventure reminds me more of like a storytelling type of scenario where like there, you know,
It could be, and it could be. And, like I said, this teacher used it for second grade math. And it worked really well because it was simple, right? It was only 2 choices, and the answer's on the page. And like, if they find the right answer, it takes them to the next and the next and the next. So, you've got to think about your audience and what it is, what information are you trying to share and review. So both of these things work. And I know we only have 15 minutes left, but Chris, I think the other thing that kind of fits really well here is the maze, right? So in addition to escape rooms this year, this is brand new for this class, I worked on making a maze. And let me share screen to show you that. I know it's a lot and it's a little overwhelming. We can talk more about the maze next time. Copy, revised PNG. This one. Okay. So I made a maze to review exponents, and their job obviously was to start at the beginning and to get all the way here. The upper left-hand corner was the start, and the lower right-hand corner was the end. And their job was to start with 5 to the 3rd power, right? So 5 times 5 times 5. And they had to decide, am I going to choose 15 or am I going to choose 125? And they would each have their own copy, right? So I would push this out to them through Hapara, where they would have their own copy and they could edit it. And what they would do is click on the box and choose a color, right? To make that box a color to show the correct answer. So by going this way, they got to 3 to the 4th power. So what is 3 to the 4th power? Is it 12 or is it 81 or is it 34? Right? So you can see, because each of these boxes, these rectangular boxes, is linked or is attached, it touches rather 3 to the 4th. There are 3 choices here, right? So they could choose one. And anyway, so hopefully they would choose and keep going and choose the right answer, but they would color all the way until they got to the end. And then they would hand it in, and I could check it visually really quickly and simply and say, your maze is incorrect, you have to try again. So that's another, it's not quite an escape room, but it's a fun kind of challenge. And we can, I know
we should spend, yeah. And because remember, that one had a lot with the template, where it was like, you really want to build, because what happens with that one is, if you're not kind of going back to what we talked about at the beginning of this with grouping things, if you're not building the structure the right way, the colors start going all cattywampus and like the whole thing gets crazy. So it's really about building that grid blank. And then once you have that grid blank, then you can then build the questions to be anything. Because what happens is if you're not, if you just build it as single elements, then you can't have it be individual paths, right?
So here's a 3x3 blank, right? And all you're doing is, but this is not the one we made a new one with no text boxes, right?
Yeah, because what happens, and that's why we'll deal with it next week, because that one really deals a lot with like understanding the structure of sort of those guidelines, but then understand that you also then have to layer additional ones on top, so that you're not changing the color of an entire line, but you're changing individual things. But what we'll do is kind of go over what we want you to create for next week in terms of the escape room / choose your own adventure. And again, they don't have to be super detailed and super perfect, but it's more about understanding the process for building these things and the kind of planning that goes into them. So what I've done is it's on that slideshow. Oops, and I'll share again.
And our next class isn't until the 12th, right?
12th. Yep. Yeah. So what for this one? So it's not till the 12th. So what we're gonna do is that's between. Oh no, I just didn't change this. Should change it. So similar to the other one is like you already have this 5602 folder, right? But inside that folder, you should make a new folder called escape room, right? Because part of this, when you're dealing with all these different elements, so much of this is going to be organization and that back-end infrastructure and understanding that you kind of really have to think in these terms, these little pieces to get all these things to come together. So then once you have that, it's really about having that doc file in that folder as your answer key. Because you have to before you can even really start building that form, you have to say like, what's the like, even if you have like pencil, handwritten notes, whatever it is, you have to make sure you're keeping track of the questions you're asking and the answers to those questions, and then whatever that code is going forward. Because again, if you don't have that level of organization like Vivian has, it'll become a wild mess, and it won't be as enjoyable or as useful, because you'll always be scrambling trying to figure out what you asked. Having that key is so important.
And if you think of it as 3 distinct pieces or layers, that's how I found it easier to do. Think of it as like, that virtual classroom piece, right? Where you're kind of building the room that the kids are in and that they're trying to escape from. And then the second distinct piece is the content that you want them to like learn or use or whatever, whether it's like a review or a test or whatever. And start with 2 or 3 forms. I was desperate for them to have work to do. So I had 5, but like you might want to do 2.
Yeah, so for this assignment, it's at least 2 Google escape rooms, because you got to escape one to get to the next one.
Exactly.
And have at least 3 questions per
Right.
lock or per form, meaning that you have to have at least 3 questions that they have to answer in order to get to the end. So then you'll also be creating the 2 Google form locks,
And
questions
then
in the answer key.
right, is like always for every escape room you make, have a table that gives the question, the answer, and the code.
And the code, right? And that's that Google Doc. This is your answer key, and that's where you're going to keep that, so you have that track record of that. And then when you're done with that, and I just really forgot to add it. There's another slides file. What'll be like create the slides file. That's the actual, the actual escape room story. That's that sort of entry point like Vivian had. Then, because we have so many, we have so much space in between, create another slides file as a choose your own adventure one, and create at least 3 storylines. So like basically in essence, 6, 8 slides total, but at least with those buttons of like, where would it go? Like, how would that story go? Whether it's a story or whether it's questions, like what's the right answer, what's the wrong answer, things like that. Thinking about these 2 things in those 2 different ways, as forms and escape rooms, or as, and even if you don't necessarily think one is going to work for you or not, that's why a couple of questions for each, just so again you can go through that process of understanding kind of what goes into building these, and then you can really then understand like what's going to be more valuable for you or your content area or your age group. You may be like, oh, I could use either one of these with my kids for different units, like escape room for math and the choose your own adventure for ELA.
Yeah.
Cool.
The choose your own adventure also works nicely with true or false, right? So like for Spanish, right? Like La fecha de hoy es, right? And then you could have the date, the actual date, and the incorrect date, right? And they choose, and like they choose the right one, like the star slide comes up, and they choose the wrong one. I don't know, maybe a sad face slide comes up, right? I don't know. But and then they can go on to the next one and the next one. And
So it's all one giant slide deck, and then you just link those appropriate slides, right? Okay.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yep, and similar to like the Google Classroom, depending on how, if you're doing so that true false example, you might have a link that says that, like if it's the wrong answer, like try again, and then that try again button will link back to that question that was just asked, or something like that. Like you use those sort of same techniques of linking the slides and having those breadcrumbs that link to each other.
Yeah.
And then that way too, like if you build both, and if you try to build both and you struggle with one, you'll really understand like that if somebody comes to you later on and goes, hey, you should try this, you'd be like, yeah, no, I've done that. Like that's not my wheelhouse, or it doesn't work for the content. But try a Google form regardless. It will certainly be harder with language, but try to see what those limitations are with the exact or the contains, doesn't contain. I mean, even social studies might be a little bit easier if you're working on dates, like if you're working on, signing of the, Declaration of Independence. I mean, that's obviously easy. That's a number, but you could still even do it with text in that context. Like as long as it contains Declaration and Independence, then that way it doesn't really matter, if they have the of or not, right? So that's why we want you guys to build simple versions of each, so you can kind of see what would work best for which specific content areas and age groups. Cool.
Vivian, can you share or just like put somewhere your examples, just so we have like also reference of like what the template for the
Absolutely. Is it linked in the?
They should be in that
Yeah.
slideshow where the assignment is on the blog.
Absolutely, but email me, like if you end up having a question or you want to see, like, I think it's linked there, but if
It's there.
for some-
Yep, the escape room is there. And Vivian, what we should do is we'll make sure we put in the a link to your answer key.
Oh, yes, the table, you mean?
Yep, the document. Yeah, with the answer key.
I'll put that in there.
Yeah,
Or
put that in.
I'll
That's
everybody, or
that's.
I don't know,
But add that to slide 8.
to slide 8. Okay,
Yeah, slide 8 is where you have your escape room. And if you
got
put
it.
that key on there, then that way everyone can kind of reference what your escape room or what your answer key looked like.
Yeah.
Sarah, what's up?
If I wanted students to actually have to submit a photo of something, I'm just trying to brainstorm of how to do this in the art classroom. Let's say I wanted students to make an origami crane to get the first code, and they had to submit a photo of it. Is there a way to like, do I have to manually verify for a photo?
Yeah,
Or do you have any ideas of how I could do something like that?
I'll have to think about how you could do it in terms of uploading, because you can create questions with photos as answers so that they would have to recognize a certain genre of art or something. I don't know how the response validation would work with uploading a photo, about whether the system knows that's a right answer or not. Because theoretically they could upload a photo of anything. That'd be a situation where it could be upload the photo of your origami is the last question, and when they submit, there's no code for the next quiz. It says go see Miss Carrie for your code, and they say, hey, I just submitted, I got to get my code from you, and then you open up the form and you see that picture, and then you write down the code or something and you give it to them. That might be how you would have to facilitate that.
Okay, that works.
But you do know that you could put in pictures as answers.
That's how I had the picture of the open lock and the door, right? So that they would see they're entering the next,
I'm just trying to think of a way that we could use like art materials to do these different tasks.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I know that this was made for like a digital space, but hoping that we're, fully in person and making art together again. I'd love to use this in a hands-on way in the art room.
All right.
Is there a way, Chris, so if the kids, I guess they could, well, no, never mind. Sorry. I was just trying to think of a way for them to get her the picture faster.
Well, it'd be the file upload would be the way to do it. And then that would be, because then the other thing too is there's no response validation on answers with pictures in them, questions with pictures. The response validation only works with the short answer questions. In theory, you could turn the form into a quiz. I'd have to play around with that in terms of how it would get the code at the end, because when you do a quiz, you could assign correct answers, meaning like it can not go on until the next one.
Right, which is what I did on.
Yeah, so it might be a type of thing of like they'd have to get such a percentage to get given the quiz at the end. I'll play around with that a little bit over the next 2 weeks in terms of like how you could incorporate images, whether they be you using an image as a question or them submitting images, and how you might finesse that. You could definitely put a picture as a question, and then the answer has to be Rembrandt or whatever, and has to be spelled exactly with those letters.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if I can do like all art activities.
Yeah.
Totally. No, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
As opposed to like art history,
Totally. Yeah. So play around with it. I'll definitely play around with it too, and figure out, because the turning in is cool, but that's going to be less automated, because you then would have to physically look at that image to see if that was actually what you wanted.
I did on slide 8 add a link to the table, and it tells you to make a copy so that you can play around with it, do whatever you want.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Of course.
Awesome. Any other questions? Everyone good?
Yay.
All right. We will see you
Yeah,
on.
I was going to say, if you end up like with a question, like something that you definitely need, like that can't wait
Yeah.
till the 12th, like feel free to shoot me an email or Chris, and like we can work on it, try to have the answer for you for.
Yeah.
I may not be able to figure it out, but Chris might be.
Yeah. Just shoot us an email and we'll figure it out. But again, that's kind of a lot of what this is like that art question. Like we've never come across that. So let's try to figure it out and see if we can make it work. And then it's also for you guys to see, does this work for your content area, for your age group, for your, whatever, for your planning, your classroom workflow.
And I'll just say, don't be afraid to make something that stinks or that like doesn't work. Or I had like 10 tries before I was able to figure it out and do something new or different. But to me, it was fun. So like every time I figured something new out and I could add it and change it and make it better for the next time and the next time and the next time. And the great part is that the kids end up loving it. So, and then once you have one done, you can always use that as kind of like your template, right? So using the choose your own adventure, using the escape room, using the mazes, it just ended up like I got less complaints about having to do homework when they had to do a maze because they thought that was fun, or I don't know. It's just, don't be afraid. Try.
What's up, Devin?
When we create these folders, you want them shared with you now, or when the course is done, are we sharing them with the two of you?
When the course is done, we'll open next on the 12th. We'll open up the projects document for you guys, and we'll go through, that'll be part of what we do on that day, about how you actually submit the like put in the link and stuff like that, and who to share it with and all that stuff.
Thank you.
Cool. No problem. All right, everyone good?
Alrighty, everybody. Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.